Hello Internet, so nice to see you. Diminished chords are just dominant chords in disguise. This is one of those little things about music theory that is completely obvious to anybody who studied properly music theory and completely mysterious to everybody else. And it's really useful for us. So let's go and see what that actually means and how we can use it to simplify our lives when we play our guitar. So first of all, what is a dominant chord? Well, a dominant chord is any chord that contains a major third and a minor seventh. So for instance, a C dominant chord will be any chord that contains the root C, the major third E, and the minor seventh B flat. The typical dominant chord, the most common, is C seventh, which is C, E, G, B. We have also the G, which is the fifth of the chord, which is really not important, but it's nice to have. But several other chords would be classified as dominant chord as long as they have at least the C, the E, and the B flat. So the root, the major third, and the minor seventh. What is a diminished chord instead? Well, that's a chord that contains a minor third and a diminished fifth, a flat 5. So a C diminished chord will contain at least the root C, the minor third E flat, and the diminished fifth G flat. Now, there are several kinds of diminished chord. This here is a diminished triad, contains only 3 notes. But we have also what we call a diminished seventh chord that contains what we call a diminished 7 or double flat 7, in this case a B flat flat, which is enharmonic to A, meaning it's the same note but spelled differently. Now, for simplicity, in the rest of this video, I'm probably going to write A and not B flat flat. For me, the two spelling are kind of equivalent. There are moments in music theory when the spelling is important and you have to respect it, but in this specific case, it's not that important. And I actually made a video about that. You're going to see it at the link on the top right, so you can go and check why I consistently misspell my diminished chord. There is also another kind of diminished chord called half diminish, where we have the C, the E flat, the G flat, and a B flat, so a minor 7, not a diminished 7th. All those are diminished chord. Now, of course, you can look at this and say, Tommaso, you just told me that diminished chord are dominant chord, but those chords are completely different. There is very little in common, okay? Practically only the root is in common and nothing else is. So how are those chords the same? Oh, my friend, if you cannot see why they are the same, it's because, to quote Back from the Future, you are not thinking 4-dimensionally. Let me show you what I mean. Let's take as our example the C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. If I harmonize this scale, meaning if I write down the chords in this scale, we have C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, and B diminished, and those are just the triads. So the B diminished chord here is B, D, F. As we see, we have the root B, the minor third D, and the diminished fifth F. But if instead of writing just the triad, I also write the 7th chord containing this scale, I have C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G 7th, A minor 7th, and B half diminish, or B minor 7 flat 5, however you want to write it. Well, let's now see what are the notes in the G 7th chord here, which is the 5th chord of the key, and it's a dominant chord. Well, the notes in G7 are G, B, D, F, G the root, B the major third, D the 5th, and F the minor 7. And as a good dominant chord should, it contains the major third and the minor 7th. But notice here how the diminished chord, the B diminished chord, is literally the G7th without the root. And so what happens, what we find out when you actually practice a little bit of music theory is that you can freely substitute one chord for the other. Whenever you have a G7, you can instead just play a B diminished triad and it will work perfectly. Indeed, the very symbol of the diminished chord, which is this little circle here, should tip us off. This is not a little circle. This originally was a 0, and the 0 meant to indicate no root. And indeed, at the beginning, the diminished chord was conceptualized exactly as a dominant chord, just without the root. Now, what happened with the other diminished chord? For instance, if I have a B diminished 7th, fully B diminished 7th, the notes are B, D, F, and A flat. Well, let's see what happens if we add back a G to act as a root. We will have a G7, G, B, D, F, and we'll have this A flat. So again, we have the note of G7, G, B, D, F, but we also have this extra A flat. This A flat, it's simply a flat 9. This full chord would be called G7 flat 9. It's an alto-dominant chord, and it's very, very, very common in jazz, and it can be freely substituted with a diminished 7. So whenever you see a G7 flat 9, you can totally play a diminished chord, and it will work perfectly. Not only that, but this similarity between a diminished 7th chord and dominant 7th chord allows you to do incredible key changes. To see how, go and see my video on diminished modulation that will explain you exactly how to change key using this substitution. It sounds amazing. But what about the half diminished chord, also called minor 7th flat 5? Well, the note in a B minor 7th flat 5 chord are B, D, F, and A. If we add back the G as a root, we get a chord that contains G, B, D, F, and A. And this is simply a G 9th chord. This extra note A is simply the 9th of the chord. So again, whenever you see a G9 chord, you could play a B minor 7 flat 5 chord instead. There is one note less, they're easier to play, because especially on the guitar, whenever you can avoid playing one note on a chord, you should, because in this way you play only the good, tasty note and not all the other ones. And so in this case, it's a great substitution. So as you see, diminished chords are dominant chord on another root, a root that is not originally in the diminished chord. And this substitution is done a lot in jazz and in classical music and in several other styles. So it's good to be familiar with that because it happens all the time, and musicians in all those styles use those two family of chord, diminished and dominant, interchangeably all the time. This is but one of the several tricks we have in music theory to make our life easier that professional musicians know. If you want to know everything there is to know about chord harmony and all those tricks, I would recommend you guys check out my course, Complete Chord Mastery. Complete Chord Mastery, it's not a book. It's a complete video course that takes you from the basics up. We do everything you need to know about harmony and chords on your guitar. All the theory is done straight on the fretboard. There is no theory for the sake of theory here. Everything is immediately practical, and everything is developed through exercises, so you know how to apply these immediately on your guitar. If you have just a minute, click on the link on the top right to check out Complete Chord Mastery. If you like this video, smash on that like button and don't forget to subscribe and click on notification, otherwise YouTube will not let you know when I put up a new video. And if you have any comment, feedback, suggestions, write them down in the comment. I enjoy reading from you and I make videos on your suggestions. This is Tommaso Zilio of musictheoryforguitar.com, and until next time, enjoy!